Did you know that Elmers Glue released a kit for making clay and there isn't a single thing about this on YouTube? So I had to go on a deep dive. This video is obviously not sponsored and contains my own honest opinions, both good and bad. As a spoiler alert, I was initially very disappointed by this kit. Based on the description, I genuinely thought that this was a kit for making your own paper clay and you'd end up with something like Daiso clay or Hearty Soft. The fact that this contains supplies for making slime plus a magic powder made it seem so intriguing. However, the actual process didn't live up to expectations at all, and I suspect the recipe could actually have been taken from one of my videos that I uploaded 4 years ago. But after a few attempts, I realized that small changes to the ingredients can produce very different outcomes. By using the right method, I managed to get a fairly decent air-dry clay, but I still have mixed feelings on whether this kit is worth the money. First up, this stretch and crate kit comes in 2 sizes. I like the fact that Elmers always uses paper packaging and their kits are filled to the top with products without using any fake filler space. This larger kit is pretty heavy and contains double the amount of the smaller one. First, you get 2 bottles of clear glue, 2 bottles of magic liquid, which is obviously slime activator, 2 packets of magic powder, 6 tubes of glitter glue, some polymer clay sprinkles, stuff for hanging your ornaments, and some googly eyes. You start with 2 tablespoons of glue followed by 1 tablespoon of activator. The instructions say to only mix until the ingredients clump together, but since this was my first attempt, I ended up making a normal clear slime. The next step is to shake the magic powder, and I was very excited about this part. I really thought that this contained a mixture of cellulose fibers or powdered binders to create the fluffy paper clay effect. To my massive disappointment, once I opened the bag, this looks and feels exactly like cornstarch. You're supposed to add 2 tablespoons at a time until you get a smooth dough. So one thing that irritates me most about Elmer's craft kits is their tendency to call all of their ingredients a magic liquid or secret solution or magic something else. I fully understand this from a marketing perspective, of course, because it sells more products if people are led to believe that they can only purchase a secret ingredient from this one company. But from an educational perspective, it makes everyone dumber and it stops children from questioning or learning how DIYs actually work. I'm still fine with slime activator being sold as magic liquid, since that contains several ingredients and it's not always easy to get the same concentration of borax yourself. However, selling cornstarch as magic powder just feels downright shameless. As you can see, I added enough of this magic powder to make a dough, and it has a reasonably smooth and elastic consistency. So while I'm making this, I'm thinking, why does it somehow feel familiar? Then it suddenly hits me that I created exactly the same recipe 4 years ago in the depth of lockdown. During the time when non-essential shops were closed, I made this tutorial showing how you can create clay using common household or supermarket ingredients. I showed how to make cold porcelain and baking soda clay, which are 2 well-known and established recipes. The third recipe was something I made up based on a previous DIY where I added paper fibers into slime. This time I decided to use cornstarch, which of course was easier to find during the pandemic. The final clay wasn't the best air-dry clay to work with, but reasonably fun if you don't have any alternatives. I obviously can't prove that the Elmers kit was based on my recipe, but I also know that adding cornstarch into slime is a very unusual method, and I personally can't find any mention of this recipe online before my video was posted. So I find it even funnier that a DIY, which was not that great to begin with, is being sold as some kind of mystery recipe involving secret liquids and magic powders. Even though I'm 99% sure this is cornstarch, I still want to test it out. To the left, I have real cornstarch, and to the right, Elmer's magic powder. This experiment is very easy because adding water to cornstarch creates Oobleck, which is a material with extremely unique properties. It's solid when you hit it, but turns liquid if you move through it slowly. As you can see, the magic powder and water mixture is definitely Oobleck. It doesn't change shape when I hit it with a spoon, but it ripples away if I try to scoop it up. The control experiment behaves in exactly the same way. So Elmer's magic powder is without a doubt just cornstarch. I obviously can't rule out the fact that there is something else inside here, but I don't think that any other ingredient will have a significant effect on the final clay. So here's the piece of clay I made earlier. It looks quite satisfying, but something doesn't feel quite right. Just for comparison, here's a piece of real paper clay. One of the hallmarks of a good clay is that you can pull it apart in 2 teardrop shapes. As you can see, the Elmers clay simply rips like a piece of overactivated slime. The instructions say that after playing with it for 10 to 20 minutes, you can form it into anything you like and leave it to dry. I decided to make a star shape and see what happens. This is what it looks like 24 hours later, and as I suspected, the shape has spread out quite a bit. This behaves a lot more like slime than clay. However, to be fair, I did feel that the slime I used in the beginning was slightly overactivated, so I'm going to give this DIY a second try. This time, I'm not measuring with a spoon and simply eyeballing the amount. I find that this is more accurate because you don't lose any of that glue stuck to the spoon. I'm adding a lot less activator this time, maybe just a teaspoonful. The mixture is still very sticky and I need to add a lot of cornstarch. However, I find that this method creates a texture which feels a lot more like dough and not a slime. It's a bit like an elastic version of cold porcelain. You can't sculpt with it as well as a proper cold porcelain, but it does look a lot better than my first attempt. I'm also making a heart with the ribbons that came with it. Instead of creating a hole, you're just supposed to push the ribbon into the clay. Here we are 24 hours later, and as you can see, the original piece of clay has completely failed. I'm certain that this one was just overactivated and it behaves exactly like slime. The second batch of clay, however, looks pretty good. The color and shape hasn't changed at all, although it's not fully dry yet. The heart also turned out great, and the ribbon seems to be attached pretty firmly. I like the fact that the clay also dries pure white. This makes it a lot easier to decorate with markers, paint, or the glitter glue provided. Now I want to take a look at the second kit. Both of these kits are almost identical aside from the add-ins. In the larger kit, you get polymer cane slices, which I don't think look very appealing. I feel that these would be fine if you're crafting with very young kids and you just want it to be a sensory experience. But I can't think of any example where you'd actually want to use these polymer cane designs for a serious DIY. I personally prefer the extras from the smaller kit a lot more. This one comes with bingsu beads and 2 types of glitter. Even if you don't end up using this in the clay, these are still a lot more aesthetic and can be saved up for other crafting projects. This box only comes with 1 pack of each ingredient, but it's still enough to make a decent batch of clay. This time I'm going to try the version with glitter glue. These can be used to give the final dough some color or sparkle. I'm using the same method as before, where I'm starting out with a very sticky, half-activated slime. Now I'm adding a lot of cornstarch until it forms a dough. The color is going to get washed out a lot because of the cornstarch, so I don't think this method is genuinely designed for creating colored clay. I think the glitter glue is just a gimmick for young children so that you have some extra steps and a sensory experience. But if you really want to add color to this, then you have to use acrylic paint or wait until everything has dried and then paint over it. This clay was surprisingly good though, and I can even sculpt a fairly complex design. I left this octopus overnight, and aside from some cracking, it held its shape very well. This type of clay takes several days to dry completely, but as long as the surface is hard, you can start painting on it. What I like most about this kit is that it's very generous with the ingredients. The glue, activator, and cornstarch is enough to make several batches of clay. It's more of a 2-in-1 kit as well, because if you don't want to make the dough, then you can simply make clear slime and add glitter or bingsu beads. I do, however, still find it very cheeky that plain cornstarch is being sold as magic powder and giving the impression that there's some special process going on. This recipe is nothing special and it's been available for free online for years. However, I also did some maths and came to the conclusion that they're not making a huge markup from any of the ingredients. So if you were to buy everything in here separately, including the cornstarch from a supermarket, then you'll still end up paying a very similar price. So the kit itself is basically just for convenience. I feel this is a good product if you have kids and want to keep them occupied for a few hours. You get everything at once and you can alternate between making slime or clay or simple ornaments. This is not a clay that can be used for serious DIYs, and more experienced crafters will probably be disappointed. The best homemade clay for detailed work is still cold porcelain, so if you want that recipe, then please check out the video I've linked below. I'm Joanna, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!